Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to now introduce our speaker, Bryson Nobles. Bryson Nobles is a serial entrepreneur who founded and launched more than half a dozen startups in the past 13 years. In addition to sitting on the advisory board for 2 tech startups and working as a business management consultant to several companies in finance, entertainment, and retail, Nobles is a co-founder of SongSplits Solutions, a data management company that contains copyright ownership data for half of the registered songs around the world. He graduated in 2004 from Penn State in the College of Liberal Arts with a degree in sociology.
Okay, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, so this is going to be fun and maybe a little different from some of the other speeches that you're going to hear. I am going to talk to you a little bit about my experience as an entrepreneur. I will qualify getting started that I am not a technical person. I probably tried every major but IST when I was here at Penn State. That's a true story. I literally changed my major 9 times when I was here at Penn State. And so with that, it means I have a little bit of experience in a lot of things. And today I'm going to talk to you about entrepreneurship. Most of you have some technical experience, and I don't know how many people, in fact, let me ask, how many people in here have a startup idea that they're working on? Just one person, one brave soul? Okay. How many of you think that you may consider starting something in the future? Maybe not today, but maybe, right? Okay, show of hands, all right. So what I want to talk to you today, because you're going to have a lot of people over the course of the week talk to you about some of the technical things and the practical things. And there's plenty of books and materials and websites that you can try on things. What I'm going to talk to you today about is something pretty simple, which I think is very important, and that's becoming a good storyteller. Because no matter how cool your idea is, no matter how sweet your technology is, it doesn't really matter if you can't get it to the people who want to buy it. It doesn't really matter because you're not going to be able to do it on a big scale if you can't convince enough people to help you take it to market. And it's definitely not going to matter if you can't convince an investor to write a check if you need one. So it's pretty important to be able to, once you have an idea, to be able to execute on that idea. So I want to talk to you a little bit about it today. I'll first give you a little background on where I am today with SongSplits. Brittany talked a little bit about the stuff that I've done in the past. I have tried a half a dozen companies in the past, and right now I'm working on a company called SongSplits. What we do with SongSplits is we manage the world's copyright data, specifically around music. And you'll hear through a few stories that I'm going to tell you exactly what that means, but to put it plainly, it's like this. Everyone in here has a favorite artist or music that you like. Those artists, they write these songs. The songs get played on the radio. In order for those people to get paid, the label needs to figure out who to pay. Well, this might be interesting to some of you guys, but most of that stuff right now is still managed on paper. And that's where we came in. We figured out, and again, it took a non-technical person like me to figure out, I shut my computer down when I can't get my email to start up, but I tell you what, we can probably do something a little better than paper. And so we built a platform 10 months ago, and in 10 months we have about 10,000 users and 74 million pieces of data that are representing customers in 28 countries around the world right now. Now, that all sounds impressive because they're stats. We're just getting started. It hasn't gotten me an investment check up until this point, so I don't want you to be too impressed by the stats. Let me roll into, or let me talk about these stories that I mentioned before. So there's 3 stories that I think that you should master. So what I'm going to do is walk you through these 3 stories that I think that you want to learn how to be good at. I'm going to give you some examples from this SongSplits experience and see if it resonates with you. So the first story that you have to be really good at if you're starting a company, here's something that you should note. In fact, if you have a pen, you should write this down. That one person is too small a number to do anything significant. If you're going to do something on a big scale, you're probably going to need a team of people to do it. So if you need a team of people to do it and it was your idea, not theirs, then the question is, how the hell do you get those people to join in on your cause and go with you? So I'll tell you a story about recruiting a team. SongSplits actually wasn't my idea. I'm not a music industry guy. I pirated music when I was younger, I'll say. That's the extent of my music industry experience. So I had a guy who was in the music industry. I was a management consultant. He said, hey, I want you to write a business plan. I have this cool idea. I think we should do something about it. I said, okay, let's meet. Me and my partner, we sat down, we met with this guy, and we sat in a room. Stories that recruit. Here he goes. So tell me, what's the story? What are we doing here? He sat me down. He said, Bryson, there's this problem in the music industry. Tell me, Al, what's the problem? Nobody knows who to pay. And then he stopped, which I assume to be a pregnant pause because I don't know what the hell that means, but that's all he said. So I asked him a few more times, well, what exactly does that mean? He said, well, everyone's managing this stuff on a piece of paper, and he went into these statistics, and he talked about all of this stuff. And he talked about that there was literally millions of dollars that were not being paid to people because they had no system to track this stuff. Now think about it right now. If you wanted to license a song, you build a website right now, you want to upload a video to YouTube right now, where would you go to figure out who you would need to get a license from? Where would you go? Where would you go? You would go to Google to find out who the rights owners are? On what website is that? Because Google goes to court every single month for the last 2 years because they can't figure out who to pay, and you're going to go ask them who you should pay. But that was my initial answer, right? It can't be that difficult. We have the web, we have search engines. You have to be able to figure this thing out, but they can't. And he went and he talked about all of these different things and statistics and all of this other stuff. And honestly, when I walked away, I'm like, I'm not dealing with this guy because it just sounds ridiculous. I have no idea what he's talking about. But then I went home and I couldn't get past the fact that this guy was telling me that there's literally thousands of writers all around the world who are not getting paid simply because of a clerical error. That story stuck with me. It had nothing to do with the money at that point. It turns out that there was a lot of money to be made, and we've subsequently been able to make some money as a result of it. But my point here is I literally was recruited into this company and walked away from a six-figure job because this guy told me a story about some people who were in trouble, and we could figure out a cool way to fix it, and I didn't even have to be that tech savvy to do it. So my point in that is this guy very unarticulately gave me this story that I latched onto, and that story brought me into this company. And I'm put this challenge to you is that when you're looking to recruit people into your business, you have to figure out a way to get them excited. Like, I loved music. I knew these guys. Or at least I thought I knew these guys. I could talk about Kanye like me and him, we went to school together. I don't know this guy, right? But I was excited, and he told me these stories. He was like, look, man, you can help figure out a way to get, Jay-Z a paycheck. That sounds cool. All right, let's figure out a way to do that. And the point was he figured out what I was interested in, and he drew me in with a story. And so that's actually how I got recruited to be the founder of this company now. It wasn't my idea. The second story I want to talk to you about is stories that sell. Now, once we started this company, we had to figure out a way to make money. You're going to hear people say this, starting companies, that you have to figure out a way to make money. It's great you can make something, but if you can't make some money, then it's all for naught. It could be cool, but you're not going to get anywhere with it. So I want to tell you two stories about selling. The first one was a colossal failure. The second one was somewhat of a success. So my first sales story is that we had this idea. I'm not a coder. The guy who started this company is not a coder, but we knew that there was a problem. So because he's been in the music industry, he has a lot of relationships with A-list artists. And he said, well, look, we're going to go down to Miami. I'm going to take you to a couple studios. We're going to meet a couple people. Okay, great. I said, well, we don't have any tech yet, but we'll explain the problem, and we'll ask them, if we explain this problem, will they pay for it? Okay, that's what we're going to do. So I sat for 2 days, put together some slides, put together some stats, and said, listen, if we do these things, you guys get this much money. My head, I'm, kind of got my chin high. This is a no-brainer. They're going to write me a check on the spot. I call. We finally get to the studio. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm talking to one of the biggest hip-hop producers in music right now, and I'm explaining to him with a PowerPoint deck with stats and numbers. And if you do this, this is how much more money you're going to make. And he fell asleep on me. Twice. And it was because I was giving him this stuff. I told him, look, but you can't, you got to understand, there's millions of dollars. This stuff is on the wayside. You guys have a record on the radio that's playing right now. You're not getting paid for it. He kept falling asleep on me. And it literally blew my mind. And so in that situation, I was trying to convince him with all of these stats and all of these numbers, and I didn't really try to connect with him. I didn't give him something that he can relate to. So this is what I'm talking about with sales, is when you're going to talk about customer acquisition, is being able to understand your customer's view of the world. That's very important, especially as technology people, is because a lot of you guys, you're going to find that you are, you're going to be smarter than a lot of the people that you're going to talk to. But the problem is, if they can't understand what you're saying, it doesn't really matter. And that's what I learned. I actually learned 2 lessons. One, never give a PowerPoint presentation in a hip-hop studio at 1 o'clock in the morning when it's questionable whether these people are even sober or not. Seemed like a good idea at the time. And 2, that facts tell and stories sell. Gave him a lot of facts. I told him a lot of good things, but I couldn't sell him anything. 2 weeks later, I get another appointment with another group in New York. These guys are, pretty solid guys in the music industry as well. I go into this room. I leave my deck at home. And I walk into this room and I tell these guys, instead of trying to give them the stats and telling them how much money, and these guys were losing real money, I could show them $3 million in receipts that they were missing. And I decided we're going to leave that at home this time. This time we're just going to try to figure out where they are and try to get them to where we are by telling them a story. So I walk in the room. I said, listen, you have an artist right now that just released this album. There's a ton of money that you guys aren't collecting. What does that mean? That means your album hasn't been licensed. So what does that mean? I said, let me explain how this works. 2 writers, they'll come together and they'll write a song. This writer will take his information and give it to his manager. This writer will take his information and give it to his manager. This manager takes this information, gives it to his attorney. This manager takes this information, gives it to his attorney. Both of those attorneys ends up sending the information to the record label, and then all of a sudden at the record label level, the record label looks at the information and says something's not right. This guy says he owns 60% of the song. This guy says he owns 60% of the song. I wasn't a math major, but that's a little too much. And so the label literally is holding $3 million of your money because the math doesn't add up. Well, how is that the case? How is that the case? I said it's happening for 4 of your artists right now, and it's literally happening every day. This time, without stats, without numbers, because these people sat in the studio and they watched this stuff happen time and time again. Paperwork, people leaving without filling out paperwork. He understood that story. He understood that line of thinking, and he wrote us a $20,000 check on the spot. Stories that sell. The last set of stories, and I'm going to give you 2 more quick stories on stories that inspire. This is actually related to dealing with investors. Now, have any of you ever tried to raise money from an investor? Know anyone who's raised money from an investor? Parents, it's a brutal business. So I'm going to give you 2 quick stories about me raising money with investors. First one is I sat down with Union Square Ventures. Fred Wilson. Fred Wilson's a guy famously for investing in Twitter, and they've done Etsy and a couple of other things. I sit down in a room with this guy, and I learned my lesson. I'm not going to go in here and be stat heavy with this guy. I said, look, I'm going to tell him a story, and he's going to get inspired, and he's going to write me a check for $5 million. I can just feel it. I couldn't sleep. I go and I tell him the story about how this situation works. And then he quickly, as investors do, trying to test my mettle, starts asking me a bunch of questions. And then I change from being a storyteller to start fire hosing him with a bunch of facts. I was out in the street looking at my phone 15 minutes later. And I later had a conversation with him. 2 days later, he called me. He said, listen, I thought that you started great. It was exciting. You walked me up the mountain. You showed me the valley. It was exciting. And I just had a couple questions. But then you stopped inspiring me. Now, here's a guy. They write checks. And he literally told me, your idea is brilliant. It makes a ton of sense. You have thousands of customers that are using it right now. But I'm an old man with kids that are your age. And sometimes I might just invest just to say I'm investing in a company that has people that my kids listen to on the radio. But you stop inspiring me in a story, and you start trying to sell me with a bunch of facts. And so my point in that illustration is that it was the story in that situation what he was asking for, but I still retreated back to trying to give him a bunch of facts and figures and trying to talk to him in a way that he couldn't relate. Because understand, he's an investor. He doesn't know anything about the music industry. All of those facts, they are what they are. Second conversation is I went and I gave a presentation to another group. And I'm actually going to show you exactly what that looked like if I can figure out a way to get out of here. And as my last story, I'm going to show you the story that I had with a second investor. And this is going to explain exactly what we've done with this business. If I can page down. So here's my story. Bear with me. So imagine a world where a simple piece of paper costs you billions of dollars every single year. This is me talking to the investors. This is a world that 3 million songwriters, 200,000 businesses live in right now. True stats. Now, this is my pitch. Imagine that you can get rid of that piece of paper and all of the clerical errors that go with it. And put a solution to that problem right into their back pockets. Meet SongSplits. SongSplits is an app that helps songwriters register songs, notify stakeholders, agree to splits. Nothing over technical here, Mr. Investor. I know you don't understand this world. But if we do this right, with this simple application that's in the back of everybody's pocket, we will have a network of content and creators that verify data that the industry relies on. And if we have all of that data, we make money by charging access to the data that we create. Challenges are tough. We got to deal with user adoption, user verification, big data management. But we feel pretty confident because collectively we have pretty good experience. In 10 months, we've gathered 10,000 songwriters and 74 million pieces of data. Less than a year, pretty exciting. And we were looking for $1 million to continue to build the application, acquire users, and manage incoming data. And I left them with this slide. The previous slide and I didn't talk about a slide that I used before, but I talked about some stats with the other investor. This presentation that I just showed you, in 20 minutes, instead of them offering to invest $1 million in the company, they offered to buy it for $4 million. Because I told them a story. They wanted to be inspired. They followed it. They weren't overly technical. I wasn't talking in language that they didn't really understand. And they got it. Now, we didn't end up taking the money. That's a conversation for Q&A. But the point is here, stories that inspire is that I've pitched, 10 or 15 investors in my life, and I made the cardinal mistake. It took me 12 or 13 times before I figured out that all of this technical stuff, all of the stuff that gets you excited, the stuff you figured out, that Googled, none of that stuff really matters. That's not their world. They want something that they can believe in, something that they can get excited about, something that they can understand. And we can understand stories. We remember stories. Facts tell, stories sell. That's something that you need to remember. And so if you decide to build a company and you decide to build something great, you have to figure out a way to, one, inspire some people to come alongside you to help you see that vision through. Two, is you got to figure out a way to get the customers that you want to go after excited about it. Generally, this is reserved for marketing, but guess what? Startups typically don't have marketing departments. So it means that you, as the co-founder, as the guy, you have to figure out a way to get them excited. And if you can get a little bit of traction with some customers, then you're in a position that you can start telling that third story, which is how to take this idea that you had and the team that you pulled together to build something that people started to adopt with. And now, here's what we've been able to do with this little bit. Imagine what we can do with the resources that you bring to the table. That's all I got. So I wanted to try to end it quickly, so if there was any specific questions about Q&A, like I said, I know that you guys are going to have a lot, and I didn't want to use the slides that I originally had, so I will open up the floor to some questions if you guys have any. I have plenty of war wounds that I'd be willing to share so you don't have to make the same mistakes.